Ooh. No, this is actually gonna look like how I row, but it might be. Okay, so at least when I'm thinking about the recovery, the biggest thing that I'm thinking about is how to set myself up for staying linear through the rest of the recovery. And so the biggest mistake, at least that I tend to make, or a lot of rowers tend to make, is they'll take their pelvis when they're in this position and they'll slouch. So it feels like if you're sitting up and you slouch, your seat moves forward. Right? So that's a huge indicator when you finish your stroke here. Right? It's a really sort of pseudo-comfortable position. You feel like you're saving a lot of energy because you're not using any of your core muscles to support you and you're slouching down. But it sets you up, one, in the boat for really kind of driving the bow down and having to climb out. And it is a really poor position to set up for the next stroke from. So when I'm thinking recovery, I'm thinking sitting up so that my shoulders are aligned with my hips. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot forward. And the way I know that I've been sitting in a good position is that my seat starts to move towards the back. So if I'm at the recovery and I'm in this position, my arms come away, I come forward, I should feel the seat actually slide out from underneath me to the back. If I'm doing it wrong, I slouch here. What happens is I come forward, my seat doesn't move, and then I just start dragging forward. I'm doing it correctly, I'll finish, arms, and then it'll feel like someone's pulling me from the center of my sternum forward. Right? So as I come forward, right, my pelvis, which is sitting right here, will push the seat back. And once that seat's back, that's a cue that I'm now in a really good position with my lower back, and you can start to slide forward. And so here, finish, arms come away, the seat moves back, and you start to feel a little bit of tension in your hamstrings. And once you feel a little bit of tension in your hamstrings is when you can kind of start to roll. So as you get through mid-drive on the recovery should be pretty low key, come away. A big thing I'm thinking about when I'm mid-drive, I'm actually feet out right now, is that I'm not pulling myself up with whatever the muscle is that sits on top of your tibia. I'm not pulling myself up with my shins. Because again, if you sit here and you're on top of the whole system and your pelvis is rotated forward, you should feel like, as you're coming up the slide, that you're just pawing the ground with your foot. Kind of like how horses, paw the ground. When I feel like I'm coming up the slide well, I feel like I'm just doing this action to pull myself up. So my feet actually stay pretty well connected to the footboards. So if I'm feet out here, I'm actually feeling, I'm not hooking my feet and dragging, because that's another way that you can really, if you're behind your hips, right? If you're behind your hips, an easy way is just kind of drag yourself up, because all your weight is kind of back here, it's hanging back, and you kind of drag yourself up and over. So finish strong, forward, right? Seat moves back, and then I just feel like I'm pawing here to drag myself up. And it's largely a hamstring action. It's not in the front of my shins, I'm not feeling, I just feel very even distribution on my feet when I'm doing something like that. So mid-drive, again, it's the same thing mid-drive. What I'm focusing on is I'm trying to keep my chest on this plane the whole time when I'm driving, right? So I paw, I'm sort of pulling myself up. As I'm doing that, I'm trying not to collapse onto my knees, right? Because that's something that's going to have to be fixed. A big thing to start thinking about is, especially on the erg, anytime you apply force to the chain, it's going to pull in this level. If your hands are high and you apply force to the chain, it's going to go low. If your hands are low and you pull, it's going to go high. So I'm trying to keep everything in line with that plane at all times so that I don't suffer any correction. So if I come up here to press like this and I drive, all this distance of dropping the handle down, the fan isn't spinning. So I always try to set myself forward for all my recovery. Here, pivot, I stay in this plane, I'm thinking chest forward, dragging myself up the slide, and as I'm kind of coming up, you're getting a little bit more tension here, you're going to feel some tension in your hips, especially if you're missing hip flexibility, and you're going to come into the catch. Same thing at the catch, right? I'm really trying to look up. I'm trying wherever your head goes, your body goes, right? So if you look up, you're going to drive that way. If you look down, you're going to drive that way. So I'm trying to look straight ahead, trying to keep my chest off of my knees so I'm not resting, okay? And I'm going to keep my arms straight. A good rule of thumb, I think, generally speaking, is anything you do into the catch, you're going to do out of the catch. So if you come into the catch straight and prepped, right, you're way more likely to come out of the catch straight and prepped. If you come into the catch and lunge forward, you're going to probably open up on the way out. Your body really likes to work in these pairs of motions. And so, again, I'm just thinking, on the recovery, how do I want to look going the other direction? And that has always been a pretty good rule of thumb for me. So set up, chest up, pulling myself up the slide, and now you get to the catch. So when we're talking about the catch, it's probably everyone's it's one of the more important positions, so it's probably the position that most people struggle with. I think some general rules are just flexibility rules. Like you could just be limited by your inherent flexibility, and a common one is Achilles are really tight, so you have really poor ankle flexibility, right? So you can tell that'd be a problem, right? Because as you come up the slide, right, you're putting a lot of tension here, and if this isn't flexible, if it can't bend, well, you only have so many options, right? To start picking your foot up and climbing through your hips. Another big one is your hip flexibility. When I'm talking hip flexibility, it's really the ability to be flat-footed, right, and sit down and compress in this sense without being, without feeling like you're having to like really fold over and really fold back. And so, again, some people can't actually have that hip flexibility, so then you kind of have to, you pay for it in weird ways. You come forward, right? A lot of people go through their knees, right? They go around their knees. And some people tuck underneath themselves because they can't. And so, like fundamentally, if you find that you're having a problem getting in the right position, and a big, and we can follow up with this later, is just stretching. You know, really stretch your Achilles, really stretch your hips, really work on putting, because forcing yourself into that position isn't going to help. Okay, so all things being equal, you should be able to sit at the catch in a strong position, right, with a strong lower back, your shins pretty much vertical, arms forward, and you should be able to just sit here and take the stroke without too much drama. Okay, you're gonna find it's like pretty core intensive in general, but anyway, so that's just sort of a quick abbreviated catch drill. So okay, so if I'm sitting at a catch, it's sort of the same thing. I want to take inventory of myself, right? My shins are vertical, my hips are forward. Another common problem people have is they're slouched to the catch, which means when they drive, right, they're going to be just driving this curvature in their back, right? Instead of taking the load with their back as far as driving the legs, they're going to be taking the curved back and they're going to be kind of driving their hips. They're going to have this really, they're going to be absorbing a lot of energy. And a good way to know if you can do that is if I get to the catch and I'm here, I should be able to actually stand up and away, kind of like you're sitting in a chair, right? With my hips are underneath me, I know a lot of people can't probably actually grab the cage, but you could simulate it with a bar. If my hips are underneath me, right, there's no way physically, if my feet are underneath me, that I'm going to be able to stand up, right? I'm just going to be pushing. But if I'm in a good position over my hips and I'm here and I drive, I pivot up. So I actually bring it up. So it's kind of a good rule of thumb to see in a good position. Another thing you can play with is where you put your feet. If you're having a really hard time getting up to the catch, for instance, if my feet were super high and I try and go up to the catch, right, I'm going to eventually reach a limit because I'm driving, my hip angle is steep already. I'm going to have to fold, right? There's no way I can have my feet this high and be on top of my hips, okay? The opposite's true if I have my feet way too low. Right? If my feet are way down here, I can get up to the catch no problem and be sitting up, right? No, I have no hip angle. The only trade-off is then a lot of my force is going to be into lifting myself off the earth. So there's a big balance. How do you get into a strong position in the catch where your hips are forward, but most of your force is still being used to drive the handle back? And a lot of that is body geometry. Like I happen to have long tibias. You know, there's a lot of give and take. So I mean, you really have to talk to your coach, look at a lot of video, but it is important to know you want to put your feet and body in a position where you can sit on top of your hips in a strong position, but that most of your force is still being directed backwards. The extremes being all my force, right? I'm in a weak position, but all my force has to go backwards, and here I'm in a super strong position, but most of my force is going upwards. So it's all just finding a balance that you're comfortable with. All right, so assuming we're in a good position to catch, right? First thing I'm thinking when I'm pulling out the catch is that I need to have loose arms. Like I just absolutely, there's nothing worse you can do than to come out of the catch like this. Because what happens is there's no way that my arm here is as strong as my legs are. So I'm gonna have to give up on my arms at some point. So any break I'm holding in my arms here as I drive my legs, I'm literally working against myself. I'm actually doing kind of like a weird self-induced bicep curl, which is gonna do nothing for boat speed, and it's gonna take a lot of energy out of the system. So the first thing I think, like when I'm leaving catches, are my arms in a position to loosely take all of the load. Okay, so arms are loose, and then immediately I'm gonna start pushing my legs. And so when you push your legs at the catch, a lot of things happen. Force is gonna come through the foot plates, right? It's gonna travel down your legs, which is pretty hard to avoid, and it's going to get into this big joint here. And the whole reason we're talking about sitting up to the catch, is that this joint is as efficient as possible in translating the energy from your feet into your hands. Because as soon as it happens, if you come to the catch like this and you're folded, right, a lot of the effort is going to be spent, like you say, driving that hip angle. And not only that, you're driving, and then here, your hips are already back. So when this boat, or the erg in this case, has so much acceleration, now it's time to capitalize on that and really send it. You have no hips, you have no actual movement in your back to drive it. So on top of your hips, you can use those later, right? I'm gonna push with my legs, and you get this idea of this legs only stroke. So a lot of things have to happen if you want to we talk a lot about driving this sort of box, right? You have this box that connects your shoulders to the handle, and you want to drive that box back with a straight back. So the number one factor in this case is core strength, because I need to hold this whole system tightly in place. It wants to just be like just a bar, almost like a crankshaft, for driving this whole box back. In an ideal world, the distance between the handle and your knees just wouldn't change, right? So I'm here, I'm just driving. I'm not grabbing. I'm not letting it get away from me, right? I have a set box that delivers from the recovery and drive away on the drive. And so I come into the catch, I think long arms, tight core, and then we can continue on for sure. It's just this idea that you can take this whole system that you set up to deliver a ton of speed through the middle and back of the stroke, right? If we burn all that up front, grab, open, we get this really good sense of connection because you're using all your muscles and the fan spins up. So when the boat's the slowest and the fan's the heaviest, we get this big connection, and now the boat's moving. We just have nothing to give to it when it's moving already. So all this setup is just to make us move efficiently, essentially. Move as fast as possible. So we're forward, we slide up, we connect, long arms, we drive. We're driving this box back with a straight back, right? And then as the knees are coming down, people exaggerate, right, in a very segmented stroke. Reality, obviously, is a little different, but the idea stays the same. As this is driving down, while maintaining connection, now I'm thinking, I want to start driving this central region of my chest back. So I'm here, and this is the easy part. If you've done it right, you should have a whole lot of purchase to really pull against. And the same principles apply. I have a lot of hinges happening, but the whole goal is to keep the handle, the shoulders, to the best of your ability in line with the work. So I'm here, legs come down. I'm going to be pivoting back to pull the handle, but really pull the handle through my arms, hanging, if you will, which I know is a tricky concept, hanging, and all these joints are pivoting to keep the work in line, right? I'm not trying to drive up with the handle, I'm not driving down with the handle, I'm staying as loose as I can in this socket and in these hips so that I can drive the work through. Another concept you can tell is if I still have muscle groups to use and pressure to apply, I should be able to continually be driving my footboards against the plate. And so if you're rowing feet out and you're doing it well, if you get to here, I can still push with my feet by using my back. When I get to here, I can still push against my feet using my arms. And I don't have a ton of mass that's sliding back. So in an ideal world, I can come up, I can push, and my feet not only they're not just connected, they're not doing that cheat where you float off the footboards and you're running feet out, they're going this thing and then they come back on. But my feet are actually still providing pressure. I'm actually forcing my feet through the boards at all points in the stroke. Even at high pressure feet out, you should be able And the only way we can keep our feet connected is because we still have room to move here. So in the final segment, you come up to the catch, loose arms, you're driving this box back, you're pushing against the feet with the opening of the back. Again, a big component here is I'm driving my back, but I'm still trying to keep my head level. So that keeps you from diving, sort of back diving. Again, I'm staying level with my head, driving back. When I get to here to finish the stroke, I'm just thinking, just like a bench pull, or a pull-up, right from forearm over my wrist to my knuckles to my fingers. I'm just trying to keep that as straight as possible, right? And a lot of people, arms out, arms in, arms back, arms forward. I'm just trying to keep everything as flat and as straight as possible so that I can just keep a really strong position through my body. For me, it ends up looking like my elbows are a little bit down, they're not way out, they're not way back. But for me to keep a flat, strong wrist and aligned knuckles, I'm going to usually finish right in the center of my sternum through my cage. And keeping all that level sets you up again to do the same thing on the way out. Your level in, your level out, and then we can repeat the whole process. Again, some good metrics are if you're rolling feet out, don't just do your feet out for the sake of I'm doing it, like I must be doing it right. I can roll feet out wrong. And you can open with the back feet out and still save it by taking your heels in and really trying to focus on, am I pushing force through my feet into the foot plates at all segments of the stroke? Am I, like a car accelerator, am I finishing the stroke and still providing input through my feet? And that's a pretty good sign that you've sequenced yourself well.